Hip Hop Saves Lives. Well, my next guest on the Tea Time Sofa is Chad Harper, the founder of this organisation. They have helped children across the globe to come together through hip hop and find common ground through education, peace and unity. His latest project is a documentary called I'm a Black American, which uncovers African American history from the days of the slave trade. He's an incredibly talented artist in his own right. So let's find out more. So welcome, Chad, to Tea Time with me, Ali Monja. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. Happy to be here. Thank you.
No worries at all. So it's all happening in New York City, is it?
Yeah. Things are back to, well, not back to normal, but a lot of things are. So we're happy we're getting acclimated to the old way of life again.
Fantastic. Yeah. That sounds good to me. So, gosh, I mean, what an interesting journey you have been on as a person. I mean, you started Hip Hop Saves Lives in 2006, is that right?
Yes, it was 2006. Mm-hmm.
And there's a story behind that, isn't there?
The birth of Hip Hop Saves Lives.
Yeah.
The name, well, so I was volunteering for an organization called Charity Water, and they were doing like elaborate cocktail parties here in New York and other places in the US. I traveled to like Sundance Film Festival with them, down to Miami. But I had written a song for them, putting all of their statistics into a song that helped people understand extreme poverty and the lack of clean water. And we started selling that song at their events. And I was like, wow, hip hop is saving lives. And we're really raising some good money through this song for water wells in Africa. So that's how the name came about. And it's just, as soon as I said it, I knew there was a ring to it. And yeah, so a few years later, I started a campaign to write more songs to honor the work of charities and humanitarians. And a friend of mine, I invited all my friends to the studio every day, and 5 days a week, we would write a new song about a different humanitarian. And a friend of mine was a school teacher. He brought some kids down and they recorded some songs. And then my friend's principal called me and he was like, this is an after school program. Get me a curriculum immediately. And boom, all of a sudden, you know, I went from managing restaurants and bars to teaching kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How amazing is that though? I mean, and also, I mean, the story behind hip hop started like in 1971, didn't it? To do with...
Right. So on December 8th, 1971, a peace treaty in the South Bronx between 42 gangs went down to stop the killing and the violence. But to maintain the peace treaty, they said we should meet every Friday and Saturday night in the park, and all these rival gangs should party together. And that way we know that we're going to see each other every Friday and Saturday. So that eliminates the idea of doing something wrong during the week, because you know you have to meet with these people. So those parties started the culture of hip hop. And just because they had signed this peace treaty didn't mean they all of a sudden liked each other. There was still kind of animosity towards certain gangs. So the best dancers would kind of battle. And that kind of created the culture of breakdancing. And from there, it just grew into, you know, a multi-billion-dollar business and touches every corner of the globe, you know?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does. So, you know, I suppose that has been quite a lot of inspiration for you in terms of your school programs as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first lesson that I give kids. I explained to them that hip hop was started by teenagers. It wasn't adults. It wasn't any type of supervision. It wasn't police authorities coming in to force a peace treaty. It wasn't community organizers. These teenagers decided enough was enough and let's come up with our own solution. So to let them know that they created such a global phenomenon I tell them, collectively, you guys have the power to change many things in your lives that you're not happy with, and to have hope, have dreams, and focus.
Yeah, no, I think that is an amazing thing to do. So your schools program though completely grew, hasn't it? Over the world, really, world over, working with different children, to sort of spread the peace, love, and unity, as I think you put it.
Yes. We started in New York City at one school on January 5th, 2012. Within a couple of months, we were at 3 or 4 schools. By the end of the year, we were at libraries, community centers, and a lot of detention centers teaching incarcerated kids. So it spread across New York within, less than 8 months, and then from there, we got requests to speak. My first international speaking gig was in Switzerland. So we taught some workshops there. I traveled to Haiti and Jamaica and Nicaragua and Brazil and East and West Africa, and it just kept growing and growing. Even did workshops in the Middle East. So yeah, we've touched at least 30 countries, I would say.
Well, we could certainly do with some workshops in the Middle East at the moment, couldn't we?
Yeah, it's getting troubled over there again.
Yeah. It's seems to be an ongoing situation, which is really I mean, can you imagine trying to get the Israelis and the Palestinians trying to do some hip hops? Do you think that might help?
When I was there, I did learn about, there is an organization that brings Palestinian and Israeli kids together to do some, not just talking and to understand their differences, but through arts. So yeah, I think starting with the youth and trying to build a new mindset for the younger generation is very important. Yeah, but it's always beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it is just such a sad situation, isn't it, to see at the moment.
Yeah.
But they have actually held a ceasefire, so let's just hope that long may that continue.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So you must have written, Chad. How many songs have you written?
Wow. I mean, I can only guess. I've written hundreds and hundreds with my kids. I've written, a lot independently, a lot with a lot of adult artists that I've worked with. I mean, to guess maybe 500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the most amazing artist that you think you've ever worked with? I know you can't sort of be too biased, but yeah.
Wow, that's a tough one. Instead of picking one, I would like to highlight the young kids that I've worked with who have a Jamaican background. Jamaica, they say after New York and London, Kingston, Jamaica is the 3rd biggest music producing city in the world, even though it's a small city on an island. And I can tell you, living in New York City, working with, kids from all nationalities, there's something really special about kids that have this Jamaican blood and rhythm. And, so I've been to Jamaica 3 times and recorded over there. And there's just something in their blood when it comes to music.
Really?
Yeah, it's just incredible. Yeah.
It's
Bob Marley was not a freak accident. There's something in the blood in Jamaica.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I've never been. I think, I will definitely go now. I've been to Antigua, but I've never ever been to Jamaica. So yeah, I will put that on my bucket list. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a special place.
So yeah. What are you working on at the moment? Because, obviously COVID has been, wow, it's just sort of knocked everybody about, hasn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I have a project that I've recently launched called I Am Black American. And Through my travels, so I came about this project for two reasons. I spent a lot of time in Africa. I've been to maybe 10 different African countries. And as a Black American, it's kind of like this, we romanticize of like, oh, going back to the motherland and we're going to be like one with the locals. And then you realize I'm culturally, I'm American, you know,
You are.
and you know, Black American, because white American and Black American culture is not, you know, exactly the same. Um, so, you know, I realized culturally I'm Black American, and then you understand the diversity of Africa. So, I mean, people ask me, what is Africa like? I'm like, well, that's like saying, what is the United States like? California is nothing like Idaho, you
Yeah.
know? Um,
52 states, 52 countries, sorry, isn't there, in
yeah,
Africa? Yeah.
yeah. So it's very diverse. Of course, there's, you know, some similarities, just like, you know, there's similarities in Europe, you know, or Latin America. But it's, you know, it's very diverse. And so I realized, okay, you know, I can go back to Africa. I can live there. I can I can experience a different culture, but I'm still Black American.
Yeah.
So when I came back to the States, I was like, I really want to study the 400 years of Africans being in the United States and really fully understand the history and the achievements and things that we've overcome. And so now I'm doing this project called I Am Black American, which, you know, goes back to 1619, starting with the first Africans enslaved in the Americas, and just finding amazing stories to write songs about and do documentaries about. So that's what I'm working on now. And some stories will be, I will include African communities in Central and South America and in the Caribbean as well, like the whole African diaspora that was part of the transatlantic slave trade, just to kind of bring like a unity, you know, to these Africans who have been now have another continent as their home, you know.
Yeah.
So I have about 4 songs, one documentary shot. It's in the editing process. This documentary is about Afro Mexicans, because most people, as Black Americans, we know that there was a slave trade in the Caribbean and Brazil and Colombia, but no one really talks about the Afro-Mexican story. And because it's the closest country, you know, connected to the United States, I wanted to kind of trickle down. So start with Mexico. So I spent 40 days in Mexico last year. And about half of that I spent shooting. The other half was on the beach with beer, but you have to enjoy life
Oh,
too.
yeah. Mexico's lovely. It really is. Yeah, and I've
Yeah.
been. So, and obviously I've been to New York. So, yeah, I do appreciate it. But what an amazing project to do, because, you know, what with Black Lives Matter, are you working in conjunction with Black Lives Matter?
No, I mean, when Black Lives Matter first took birth in 2016, around the Mike Brown shooting, me and my business partner at the time, we traveled from New York to Ferguson and did a documentary in support of their movement. But now, you know, so far I haven't reached out to get any partners with I Am Black American. There's just a certain amount of content that I want, so I'm launching the website probably in less than a week. But there's just certain content that I wanted on there before I launched, and then start reaching out to partners.
Well, that sounds really exciting. So are you going to sort of just shift Hip Hop Saves Lives, or are you going to, is it all going to come under the same umbrella, or?
Yeah, so originally, you know, I Am Black American, I mean, it's still part of Hip Hop Saves Lives.
Yeah.
But some of my business, you know, associates said that I should start a whole separate company, because still the term hip hop turns some people off. But the history behind the statement "I am Black American" might be a little broader, but still everything I do is rooted in hip hop. Like, I'm writing hip hop songs about these great stories and achievements. I'm also, the documentary that I shot in Mexico, the soundtrack will be hip hop. I'm kind of editing it in a way of a hip hop music video type, because for the entertainment, because still my audience is hip hop. I want to educate the hip hop community, the younger generation. So I think it's best to keep it under Hip Hop Saves Lives. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because I think, that's fundamental, and it is, I mean, hip hop, forgive me, isn't it African American anyway, that it kind of originates from?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I got that right. See?
Yeah.
No, but the thing is, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from.
Mhm.
I mean, the history, the amount of history that has been shoved under the carpet,
Right.
about, Black history is just awful, really, isn't it? I mean, it's only now with movements like Black Lives Matter and what you're doing, that people are actually learning the truth. I mean,
Right.
over here in the UK, we have something called Black History Month.
Right. We have one here as well, but it's not done very well.
No.
No.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's kind of the same here. And, I mean, I'm, very open to everybody, because that's the way I am. And I just think it's, why should, it just be Black History Month for 1 month? Why can't, it just be sort of integrated when we're celebrating different people and different things? That should happen. And I do believe that there is going to be, especially with Generation Z now, I really do think that in the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to see that happen, don't you?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe, especially because, this generation, they've grown up with computers, and they realize the access that they have to information and to share information. I think it's going to be hard for any type of school curriculum that wants to stay in the old way to maintain kids' interest, because they're going to have access to, whatever they want.
Yeah, which is, cool. I mean, I think education is an amazing thing, and it doesn't matter what subject it's in. It's, it's an amazing thing, and we can all self-teach these days, can't we, with this amazing tool, the internet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you started filming the documentary, I mean, you must have uncovered quite a lot of stuff. Was there any sort of, stories that were really, well, I suppose quite a lot of it is painful, isn't it?
Yeah, but shooting this documentary was really inspiring, because there's a particular guy, he's like the center point of the documentary, and his name is Yanga, Yanga, and he's actually a national hero in Mexico. He was an African prince who was enslaved in the early 1600s, and he escaped to a mountain area. And when these Africans typically escaped, they would find the area that had the worst terrain, which hopefully would deter people from trying to find them and catch them and make it easier for them to hide. But long story short, he would sneak and free other Africans, and they developed their own community up in the mountains. And to survive, they knew that, the plantations that they escaped from had so many resources. So at night, they would go and they would rob these plantations for food and for weapons to defend themselves, materials to build things with. So the Spanish at the time started to try to find them. So they started moving their location around, which got them further from the plantations. So at the time, Veracruz is the main city where it's still today the main port city for Mexico. So all the shipments to the wealthy families that were living in Mexico City had to go through this highway from Veracruz to Mexico City. So they decided, okay, we'll attack these, I guess they were horse and carriages back then, but I guess they were like shipping horse and carriages. So instead of attacking the plantations for stuff, we'll attack these, horse and carriages with all these shipments of goods. So they started robbing all these horse and carriages, for materials to build their own communities. And the wealthy families in Mexico got so upset because they kept losing so much material that they built a city called Cordoba near where a lot of the robberies were happening on the highway, and put an army there. So they went to war with Yanga and the other Africans that had, formed this community. They went to war twice. In the first war, Yanga won. And then the second war, both sides took a beating. So they decided to do a peace treaty. And Yanga sent the peace treaty down. And at the time it was called New Spain. It wasn't Mexico yet. So New Spain agreed and signed the peace treaty, and was said, if you just stay where you are, wherever mountain you're hiding on, just leave our shipments of goods to the wealthy families in Mexico City alone. We will not come look for you. Whatever land you're on, you can name that after you. So I went to the city, and still to this day, the city is called Yanga. And in the middle of the city, there's a giant statue of him. And there's a huge mural, I would say it could be 100 feet long, that tells the story of he was enslaved, he lived in slavery, he escaped slavery, he helped other Africans escape. He fought back and to build his own community. And he became such an inspiration because he defeated the Spanish army, that people in New Spain who wanted to be independent from Spain said, hey, if this African and his group of comrades defeated the Spanish, maybe it's time that we start our own revolution and become a separate country and become Mexico. And that's what they did. So when they defeated Spain and became an independent country, the new government of Mexico made Yanga a national hero for inspiring them to become independent.
That's an amazing story. And I can't believe I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So it was, and then I found out that there's 5 cities in total in Mexico named after Africans, because there were 4 other cities where Africans had escaped and built their own communities. Yanga was just the most famous. But so there's 5 cities in Mexico with African names.
Fantastic. Yeah, I just love that story. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. So when are we going to get to see this documentary then, Chad?
Well, I have a trailer that I put together. So the trailer is available to see. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the editing process. I'm also writing the script for the documentary so I can lay out the story that I want to tell. And each story has a little bit of my personal experience in. So I grew up in an area of Cleveland, Ohio. I moved to New York in '98, but I grew up in an area of Cleveland, Ohio, a suburb called Shaker Heights, and it has a really unique history of being the longest integrated city in American history, because it was designed from its birth to be that way. It has really, really wealthy, multi-million-dollar homes, all the way down to middle class and even lower middle class. So they were able to create the suburb that had huge financial diversity, which at the time meant a lot into including Black Americans, because this was like, 100 years or so ago, or 200 years ago. So what I'm trying to say is the high school that I went to was like 50% white and 50% Black. And to grow up in a community that's totally diverse like that is not common in the United States. Living in New York City, New York City is really diverse. Neighborhood-wise, not really. And school-wise, not really. It's diverse because we all live in this giant city. But, when I first moved here, an Irish neighborhood was Irish, a Polish neighborhood was Polish, a Russian was Russian, same way as a Jamaican was a Jamaican, or a Haitian neighborhood was Haitian. That's changing. That has changed a lot now because of gentrification. Mm-hmm. But, for me in the 70s and 80s, growing up in a half white, half Black community, I didn't really know what racism was. I could see it on TV, but I never really, it was so little that it's something I never really thought about. until I went to university. And then I think like the Rodney King video. Do you remember Rodney King? He was the black guy that was beaten by like three or four, I think it was four police officers, and they beat him with billy clubs for like 10 minutes. And it was all caught on video. And all the cops were acquitted. And that was the first time I really realized, like, whoa, like racism is a serious problem in this country. So for me, really, fully experiencing racism came later in my life because I kind of grew up in this little utopia. So I kind of tell a little bit of that story, as I introduce the documentary, just to have, because a lot of people don't understand that the Black experience in America is very diverse. If you grow up in the suburbs, it's totally different from growing up in the inner city.
Right.
But typically they think, oh, you're Black, so you live in the inner city, and what's it like? Is it scary? No, for me, I grew up with squirrels in my backyard and birds chirping, and one neighbor was white, one neighbor was Black, and we didn't know any different,
Yeah. Which it sounds like, you had a lovely childhood, really, which is nice. How you want any child to grow up. I've got children as well.
Right.
You want your children to grow up in that sort of safe environment, don't you?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it has become more and more apparent that there is, a lot of racism that still goes on. And I think, to bring us up to date, I think the fact that George Floyd's death was videoed last year has really, it's resonated across the planet, really, hasn't it? So which is a really good thing, because people need to wake up to the fact that there is still racism, and that there has been treatment from police officers that is just been totally unacceptable.
Yeah. It's and even after George Floyd, there's been a lot of incidents that don't get international attention, but
Breonna Taylor, there's loads of
there's loads. I mean, it's almost a different one every week, in the United States. It's almost like every week there's a different one,
Yeah. So, I mean, with your project, you should, again, you're sort of like a driving force, aren't you, to get messages out there, which I just love, by the way, because that's what we're all about here as well. It is driving those messages forward to make a change, to make a difference. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, education is just so paramount, isn't it, really, in all of this?
Yeah.
In all of this, because I think that's brilliant. I really do. I can't wait to see this documentary now. I bet it's
Thank you.
Cool. So when did this kind of like whole seed of creativity begin?
For me, I mean, I started writing. I was a breakdancer at like 12 or 11. There was a movie called Beach Street that came out. It was a shot in New York City. It came out in 1984, and it was, I think, the first hip hop movie. It was about hip hop culture in the Bronx, and I think a little bit of Manhattan as well. But as a kid living in the suburbs in Cleveland, Ohio, and this movie comes out, and we go see this movie. Instantly, my life was changed. I was like, I have to be a part of this. So I started breakdancing, started beatboxing. A couple of years later, I think I was a freshman in high school, around 14, I started writing my own rhymes. In college, I think I recorded my first songs in college. And then there was a break for a couple of years. After college, you got to get to work and make money and stuff. And then I moved to New York City because I wanted to get back involved in it. And I moved to New York City in 1998 and just started recording music right away. And it kind of took off.
Kind of took off from there. No, that's fantastic. That really is. So Cool. So have you just written a song recently?
Well, I just released the title track, the theme song for I Am Black American.
Yeah.
So that's the last thing that I released. I'm working on some other songs as well, but I released the song called I Am Black American, which is on Facebook, on my Hip Hop Saves Lives page. So you can see it. And what I did was I created a flag. So I took a video of me rapping and I put it in the top left corner. And then I chose about 16 different Black Americans who were heroes of mine, or just really famous Black Americans. And I put videos of them as I'm rapping. These videos kind of just appear up, and you see like Malcolm X and Huey Newton and Oprah Winfrey and Michael Jordan and Tupac. And so at the end of the video, you have this flag of Black Americans. And it was just really inspiring. You know, Nina Simone's on there. It's just really inspiring to see all of these Black American that were heroes of mine on one page, kind of representing, you know, the theme song that I wrote, you know, I Am Black American.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. That sounds cool. Definitely. I mean, actually, Oprah is one of my favorite Black Americans. She really is. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she? She just recently did that, which is quite shocking over here compared to over there. But you know, over here, because of the royal family, where it's all shocking, the Harry and Meghan interview that she did.
Oh, Oprah interviewed Meghan.
Yeah, and Harry. Yeah, Prince.
Oh, okay, great.
You've not seen it? Oh, you should see it. It's
Nice.
will you be able to? You will be able to pick it up on the internet, maybe.
Yeah.
Where was it on? It was on. Well, what's Oprah's network? So hang on, I've got to think.
OWN.
Oh,
It's called OWN. Her network's
yeah,
called
you should be
OWN.
able to pick it up over there. It was on ITV here. I don't know if you're familiar with that channel. ITV.
ITV.
Sounds so London, doesn't it, compared to your lovely American accent?
I love the British accent. I mean, well, I love the London. I know the London more than the other areas, you know.
Anyway, Chad, it has been really lovely, and thank you so much for coming on Tea Time today with me.
My pleasure, and I love the title, Tea Time.
It's very British, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You know, in my travels, I was in Istanbul, Turkey, and they told me the Turkish people in Turkey drink more tea than the British. And I was like, no way, I don't believe it. But they said our claim to fame is we drink the most tea. So I just thought I'd share that with the Brit.
Oh, thank you.
Should be a tidbit.
This is probably true, actually. I mean, I like a cup of tea, but I have to admit, actually, I do drink a lot of coffee. Look forward to chatting with my next guest on the Tea Time sofa this time next Saturday. In the meantime, if you would love to get in touch about having a chat with me, you can reach me on teatime@forthenow.co.uk, or you can find me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram on Tea Time with AM. Bye for now.